Welcome, everybody. It is Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University, and we are sitting down with Dr. Louis Profeta. He is one of the authors of our brand new book, From Letters to Leaders. So by all means, go out and pick up that book. I'll tell you a little bit about Dr. Profeta. He is a nationally recognized award-winning writer. He is a TED Talk speaker and an emergency physician at St. Vincent Hospital of Indianapolis, which is a level 1 trauma center. He has cared for more than 60,000 patients. He is the best-selling author of the critically acclaimed book, The Patient in Room 9 Says He is God. He is a dynamic and sought-after public speaker and a frequent guest on TV and radio. Now, following the success of a Sunday talk on sex, drugs, drinking, and dying, Dr. Profeta has been invited to speak all over the country on this particular topic, and that is exactly what was published in our brand new book. So I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to hear the author, speak to the author, and we have Dr. Profeta with us here today. Welcome, Dr. Profeta. How are you?
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. It's always good to catch up with you. And you know what? We have a few questions that I figure our audience is going to want to hear more about. Tell us, when you got our new book, it finally arrived at your home last week. What were you thinking about when you got this new book in the mail?
Well, I think it was a sort of great compilation of different topics that are germane to college campuses, to even probably late high school, and issues that are affecting society today. So I think it offered a sort of a good sort of starting point for young people and for universities to have discussions about complicated issues with their students. So yeah, I think it's a great adjunct.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you were a part of this project. I think it's great that people get a chance to read some of your work. I think it's absolutely incredible. You obviously have millions and millions of followers on LinkedIn, so you have a big following there. Now, your chapter in the book is called A Sunday Talk on Sex, Drugs, Drinking, and Dying, which is this blog post that you made on LinkedIn. And what made this particular post resonate with so many people around the country? It went viral. Why do you think that happened?
Well, you ask a good question. I think a lot of it has to do with that I presented this talk in sort of a way that maybe nobody had before. I got invited to speak at my son's fraternity, a typical talk on, drugs and alcohol. And I could see that I was sort of losing the students to some degree. And I think that probably happens with anybody who goes and speaks on this topic. They don't want to sit and listen to that crap, So I started to lose them. And one of the students asked me a typical question you ask an ER doc: what's the worst thing that you've ever seen as an ER doc? And I looked at him and I just said, worst thing I've ever seen is look on your mom and dad's face when I tell them you're dead. And I just got real quiet, and I sort of just let it fly. I started screaming like a father had lost his child, and I could see the entire tenor in the room changed. And even my own son sat in the corner sort of shaking, and it sort of opened a new avenue. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, so that's what it takes to get through to you guys. You guys don't really see your own mortality, but you can see the despair that you leave behind. And that is what is going to resonate with you. And that's how to really drive this point home. So after I got done talking to them, it was amazing. They all came up and hugged me and shook my hand and thanked me. And even my own son said, Dad, I've never seen anything like that. And I've never seen students respond like that. And so I went home and I wrote an article detailing that very sort of personal experience I had with the Sigma Alpha Mu House at Indiana University, and wrote a Sunday Talk on Sex, Drugs, Drinking, and Dying. Now I have, obviously, Michael, I already had a pretty big social media following with LinkedIn. It was one of LinkedIn's top voices. And so it blew up. The article was read, just millions of times now. And the minute that article sort of, I guess, became viral, I started getting phone calls from colleges, from college sports teams asking if I would come and talk to their student bodies. And, I tweaked it, found out what works, what doesn't work, what resonates, what doesn't. And I think we're on to something.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you and we were both college students once upon a time, a few decades ago. And, we thought that we were invincible at that age. And I think that is the problem. But when you reframe the conversation and then you say, this is what your dad is going to, look like and yell out, and this is what your mom is going to feel when I tell her you're no longer here, suddenly the conversation changes. And so I think you're really onto something with this particular chapter. And I think I've seen the presentation live at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and it blew everybody away. You had, IFC leaders were standing up applauding with a standing ovation, because I don't think they had ever heard the material presented in that kind of way.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. And I think, I'm a doctor in a level 1 trauma center. I mean, I've told hundreds of parents their kids have been killed in my career, and I can see the faces of every one of their parents. It's the worst thing that I have ever experienced in my life, other than the sickness of my own children. Yeah. And I try to bring that reality to them, that whole concept, that notion that they're going to be forgotten, that the world doesn't have scholarship and memorials for kids that choke on their own vomit, that it's a different type of death, it's the stigma death, and that their parents will never be happy again. So, and then, I try to open up by offering them guidance and easy access to me too, because I have, Michael, as we've talked, I mean, I can't even tell you how many of these students contact me vis-a-vis email and have very personal questions they want to ask me. I've even called some of their parents. They've asked me if I would call their parents and run interference with them, or get them on the phone in a conference call, just to sort of smooth the waters a little bit. And there's that need out there, I think, for people like me. And I've tried to encourage a lot of my colleagues nationwide, ER docs, to sort of take the reins and do similar things in their locality. So.
Yeah, that's why it works. I think having access to an emergency room doctor who sees all the trauma that you see on a daily basis, I mean, the questions that the students ask, I mean, they're off the wall, the questions that they ask. Yeah, but it's great that they have somebody to go to with some experience and some knowledge in the area.
Yeah, and I think somebody who's not judgmental and who's on their side. I mean, they're tired of being told that they're the problems, Michael, and they're not the problems. In fact, it's the opposite. They're the solutions to a lot of the problems we're seeing in society, because they're taking these issues and they're showing up and they're having discussions about them and they're meeting about them, and they should be applauded and congratulated on that leadership. And so every time I go to these different fraternities and sororities, I try to emphasize that I am really proud that they're taking the reins on these issues, because we know there's no other community within college campuses that are having these complicated discussions that have any real impact. And I'm just I've been so amazed about the outpouring of response from the students. And, a lot of them still reach out to me. They'll ask me career advice, and it's so crazy to have them. My kids will be in other states, and they'll bump into people and they'll start talking about college campuses and stuff. And they'll say their name, and they go, wait a minute, your dad, I think, came to University of Arizona. Your dad came to University of Mississippi. I met your dad. Oh my God. And it is so cool for my kids to come back and say, hey, Dad, this resonated with those students. I mean, they come up to us and other venues, and they tell us, that you changed their lives, or you have really made a difference. And it's sort of fun to see my kids proud of me like that. So
that is very cool. And I think that's why we get along so well, is that we both agree that today's students, and specifically the fraternity and sorority community, they are the solution. They're not the problem. Right. We have to find a way to leverage the leadership that exists within our fraternities and sororities to change the culture to be a safer environment on college campuses as a whole.
Yes,
and I think we can do that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, the other thing is you had a post on Facebook a couple of days ago that I really liked. And this is what it said. It said, yes, over the last week or so, we are seeing an uptick in COVID cases. Some are really, really sick. Some will die. They all have one thing in common. They have not been vaccinated. All wish they had been. It seems like this vaccine has gotten so political, which is obviously not a true statement. We're just talking about a public health matter. So we all want to get to herd immunity in this country as fast as humanly possible. How do we change the minds of those in our country that refuse to get the vaccine?
Well, I mean, the people in this country that don't get vaccinated, it's not just all political. I mean, there's just there's so much stuff out there on the internet in terms of, different people, pseudo experts and stuff saying this and saying that. There's cultural reasons too. I mean, minority communities have been incredibly disenfranchised throughout history. You just look at things like the Tuskegee trials for African-American men. I mean, so there's certainly some hesitancies in certain groups in this country. Also, you got to realize is that if you have not been directly impacted by somebody dying with COVID-19, and remember, most of these people were from nursing homes, so they were dying out of sort of out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. It's not going to resonate with you if this illness, it's killed over 500,000 Americans right now. But if this illness, and most of them over the age of 80, but if it had killed, say just even 10% or 20% of them had been young people under the age of 25, I mean, we would talk about the collapse of society. Everybody would be taking this a lot more seriously. We can only do what you can do. But, what was scary for me, at least last week that I worked, is all the people that I admitted were actually in their 50s. I mean, and they were really sick. In fact, I admitted one 19-year-old that was horribly ill with horrible complications related to COVID-19. And we're starting to see younger people. And I don't really know why, but it's frightening to watch the incredible fear on the faces of these people as they're air hungry, as they're sitting there gasping. They're terrified. And a lot of them know that they may end up dying. And it's horrible. It's a horrible thing to witness. And we can only hope that the college students will take this to heart. And, what we're also seeing is we're seeing young people come in with what we call viral cardiomyopathies, where their hearts aren't working right. And this is all COVID mediated. These are all complications of COVID-19. And a lot of these people maybe were athletes, or they were runners, or they had hobbies and stuff that involved exertional activity, but you can see that they're incredibly winded, they're fatigued. We don't know if these people are ever going to recover. So, we have to do everything in our power to get young people vaccinated before they go back to college.
Yeah, there's so many great pieces to that answer. You brought up minority communities, specifically the Black community being disenfranchised through the Tuskegee experiment. And so you're absolutely right. There are more reasons than just political on why somebody would not get the vaccine. Perhaps they don't know anybody that has been impacted, and so they don't see the need.
Well, also, a lot of people simply don't have the access. I mean, you realize that most of these clinics operate during the daylight hours. We know a lot of working people can't go and get vaccinated. It is labor intensive for them. And we can point fingers and we call them stupid and we can say all these things, but we have to realize that a lot of people don't have babysitters. They don't have people to take care of their other elderly family members. They have responsibilities. They got to be at work. They're limited on their choices in terms of vaccine times. And so anything that we can do, which is to help them, which is one of the reasons why I reached out and said, hey, listen, adopt other people, help them get vaccine times, serve as their eyes and ears for spots opening them up. And I think it'd be a great project for college kids to do, to maybe help people get on the vaccine rolls.
Yeah, I like that idea. And also thank you for increasing our awareness that you're actually starting to see younger people come in to the emergency room. I think that is an important point. That's something that's new, that's a little bit different than what you experienced before.
Sure.
So that's really important. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that you recently published another post. It was called COVID, College, Drugs, and Drink. In here, you talk about the hazing deaths on college campuses and wanting to arm the students with what you called the shield of no. This fall, it is going to be all about the social events in person and the power of belonging to get access to these social events on college campuses. So how can we arm our children with the shield of no when the pull to belong to these organizations and be a part of these social events is so strong that it's like breathing air for you and I?
And I've heard you say that before. It's sort of interesting because, there's an entire population of college students out there, Mike, that don't think that way. Mm-hmm. That the pull of this is not so overpowering that they feel like they have to do that. I mean, realize the Greek system is what, 20% of college campuses? Something like that? That means 70 to 80% don't really feel a need to be a part of the system, which is fine. So it may be that we're selecting sort of a group of students that my kids used to use the term in New York City when they lived there. They called the fear of missing out, FOMO, is what they would say. And, so I teach medical students. I have tons of medical students that rotate through. And I'll tell you, the vast majority of them never engaged in behaviors like that. And they'll be honest about it. Occasionally, maybe they'll get drunk, but the vast majority don't. So there's tons of college students out there that don't engage to that degree of reckless behavior. So I think we do have to do a better job in the fraternities of identifying students that maybe are a little too complacent and a little too willing to go along with the flow. We talk about hazing. We scold people and say, hey, you shouldn't haze, but realize only a very small portion of the fraternity and sorority population really actively engages in hazing. And you can talk to those people till you're blue in the face. It's not going to make any difference. Okay, it's not going to change your behavior because they're probably just not wired that way. So we have to start paying a little more attention and focusing on the people that are pledging, and not only tell them that they can't haze, but insist that they not be allow themselves to be hazed, because these are men and women. These are grown men and women. Okay, the vast majority of grown men and women are not going to chug down a bottle of hard alcohol just because somebody says they have to in order to join a club. That is actually it's not a common behavior, but we have sort of made it seem common in some ways. And we have to start pointing that out. Is that in and of itself is pathologic personality behavior too. The willingness to just do something to feel like you have to belong. And I think that fraternities and sororities have to be able to better identify the people that are willing to do that and make sure those people are not pledges. Yeah. And we have to insist that our pledges be stronger individuals.
You hit the nail on the head. In the industry, what we're talking about now is who are the fraternity members and the sorority members going after on a college campus. And if you look at all of the college freshmen that come to college, you can probably say with some reasonable certainty, and again, it's an average, but maybe 15% are what we call the always joiners. These are people that knew going into college they were absolutely going to join a fraternity. Maybe they watched Neighbors, maybe they watched Animal House, maybe their parents were Greek. These 15% said, I'm absolutely going to be in a fraternity before they even step foot on a college campus. Then there's another 15% are the never joiners. Even if we gave them a Porsche and Super Bowl tickets, they're not going to join a fraternity or a sorority. That's just how they are. The other 70% that we're not talking about, these are the maybe joiners. I was a maybe joiner. Why? Because my parents were from another country and I didn't know anything about fraternities and sororities. And so, I didn't either know anything about fraternities or I really didn't care, but I could be convinced to join if I was approached the right way. Now, the maybe joiners are a lot harder for fraternity members and sorority members to go out and recruit, right? Because they're the maybe joiners. They don't know anything about it or they don't care. And the always joiners, they're very easy. That's the low hanging fruit. And so it's a lot easier to go after the always joiners. And so that's what we have to get away from, is to basically say, let's focus on the maybe joiners. And yes, it's more work to convince somebody who is, I don't know, let's call it the chess club president, right? This is somebody who is part of an organization, leads an organization, is already embedded in the infrastructure of the college campus. And it's going to be harder to get him to join our fraternity. But if we bring him over, he already leads in another organization on campus. So the chances are he's going to come to our fraternity and lead also. He's not going to sit in the back of the room with a spit cup during the chapter meetings. He's going to want to lead because that's what he does elsewhere.
Exactly. And those people will turn around and be better alumni too. They're going to be more benevolent. They're going to be more giving on the back end. Michael, I knew nothing about the Greek system. I mean, I hit the door with the sole purpose of becoming a doctor. When I showed up to college, I was a horrible high school student. So I locked myself in a library for 4 years. And I really didn't know anything else. It wasn't until my kids really got into the Greek system did I have any inkling about it and starting to talk. And I've been able to be witness to how they rallied to my son's aid when he had cancer. So I've developed a soft spot for the fraternity and sorority system in this country. I think that they do represent some of the best that colleges have to offer, but we still have to give them some guidance. It's a scary world out there.
Yeah, I agree completely. Obviously, I love the story about what happened with your son and how his fraternity brother supported him when he was in a time of need. I think that's an incredible story. And I hear those stories every day. And that's
Sure.
why I'm such a proponent of the Greek system, because I see instances like your son. I see that all the time.
Yeah.
And, that story probably doesn't make the newspaper. I know you wrote about it in your blog post, and obviously we appreciate that as a Greek community, but it usually doesn't make the newspaper. I mean, let's just be honest.
Sure.
We don't hear those stories.
Nope.
So anyway, so I appreciate, hearing that. And I appreciate, you talking about it on your blogs. I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
You've had a lot of time, I think, to kind of digest this blog post, A Sunday Talk on Sex, Drugs, Drinking, and Dying. You've done the presentation in person on college campuses all across the country. Now looking back at it, what's your favorite part of that particular story or that chapter of our new book? And I was wondering if you can read it to us as well.
You mean read from the article? Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I think I know what paragraph I like.
All right.
But,
I'm sure you've read it once or twice.
Yeah, I have. Dead waxy with rock-still clouded eyes, you could never envision a stare so distant. You played pickup basketball yesterday at the campus rec center, and Benny maybe hit 1 out of 10 threes. You blew him crap all day about it. Now, though, he is still lying among the pile of yet-to-be-washed clothes or wrapped up in a blanket on a piss-soaked IKEA futon delivered to him last week. You bought the TV and the coffee table. The top 2 drawers are yours. Think about it. Nobody gets up in the morning, brushes their teeth, combs their hair, and says to themselves, "Today is the day I die," I told them.
That's powerful.
So that actually may be one of my favorite, I don't say favorite, but I think more impactful. It's the sudden, and I try to bring that to their attention, is that, nobody plans for this stuff. The abruptness of it, the way it looks, and try to paint an image of what it's going to look like when you wake up and find your roommate dead. And that's what it looks like. And that's the scenario and how it plays out and how, the sounds, and I try to replicate that, the sounds, the smells, what that entire fraternity house is going to look like when they wake up and they found somebody dead of a drug or alcohol overdose, that all pandemonium breaks out, that you will know in an instant they're dead, that image is going to be seared in your brain for the rest of your life, and that nothing you do is going to make it any better. And everybody's going to be screaming. It's going to generate pandemonium, and you're going to come to the emergency department. And then I'm going to have to go in there and tell your mom and dad what happened. And they're going to blame you for the rest of their lives. And there's no way of getting around that. And it all happens so quick, unplanned, unscripted. And I don't care what your intentions were. This is how reckless behavior, how it progresses. This is the way it moves. So, that's why I try to paint that picture. And so I hopefully I did. Hopefully I captured it. I think I did.
I think you did as well. And I talk about the same thing when we talk about either alcohol abuse or even hazing to a certain extent. Nobody ever sets out to kill somebody. Nobody says we're going to kill a kid today. I've never heard that ever. It's, something just goes wrong, something goes awry, and suddenly we're now in this situation where we are facing imminent death of one of our fraternity brothers or sorority sister. And that is ultimately, I think, what we need to keep talking about, because people, just think, well, it starts out with something small and kind of innocent, and then suddenly it goes haywire. So we have to kind of protect from even getting to that point.
I had a buddy that used to be a pro golfer, and we used to play golf on occasion. I was a horrible golfer, and he would give me pointers. And one of the best pointers he ever gave me, he says, "Don't turn one bad shot into 2 bad shots." And what he meant by that is, like, if you hit the ball out of bounds and it's unplayable, don't try to make a heroic shot. Just punch it out in the fairway and start over. Mm-hmm. Almost all these deaths like this, when you look at the scenarios that play out, whether it's hazing, whether it's overdose situations or falls or trauma from doing something stupid, all is a compilation of 1,000 little mini errors that just keep piling onto each other. So if somebody has too much to drink, that's error 1. Error 2 is the other person going, well, let's keep an eye on him. That's error 2. Then it says, well, instead of just keep an eye on him, let's lay him in bed and put him to sleep. We'll check on him in a couple hours. So it's a series of little individual mistakes that ultimately lead to the catastrophic failure at the end. That leads to the quadruple bogey, so to speak. And that's what you're saying. When you look at almost all these instances, it's not one major sort of catastrophic act of violence or dangerous behavior or reckless behavior. It's a compilation of a whole bunch of little ones that add up into ultimate death. Yeah. And so I try to show them how to stop that, how to and how we utilize the emergency department and how we're the safe space and they should be coming to us. And I try to pound that into their heads over and over again to come in and let me see you.
That's it. To all of our listeners, call 911, bring them to the emergency room, and let them have a chance with Dr. Profeta so we can try to save them. But if you don't call 911 or you don't bring them to the emergency room, there is nothing that Dr. Profeta can possibly do. Yep. There's nothing.
Nothing. Even if they're not breathing, if they have a pulse, we're going to keep them alive. They'll be okay.
Yeah.
We'll save them. But man, once they hit that point of no return, I got nothing for you.
Right.
So, and it's horrible. And I can tell immediately when it comes in.
Yeah, that's what breaks my heart every single time when I read about these incidents in the newspaper, when all this time elapses and you have people, trying to do searches on Google to try and figure out what to do to avoid getting in trouble, but at the same time trying to save their friend or fraternity brother or sorority sister. Just get them to the ER. Just call 911, please. I beg of you.
Well, also, and you've seen this, Michael, at these talks, one of the most common questions they have is, well, will my parents find out? How much is the copay? Will they know I was there? And so, I tell parents, you got to have these talks beforehand. I said, there's not a parent in the world that would sacrifice their kid or risk their kid's life for the sake of a copay. None of them. And, I'll run interference. If there's an issue like that, I'll call your mom and dad. I'll smooth it over. Okay. I'll make it better. I do this for a living. Okay. I think about how many high school kids come in drunk after some high school football game. Yeah. We'll cool it. We can calm the jets. We can bring everything back down.
Right.
So, but yeah, give me a call. I'll show you how it's done.
Yeah, we can fix that stuff with your parents and smooth things over with the school, but we can't bring you back if you're gone.
Right. That's all fixable.
That's unfixable. Yeah. Listen, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. I think this is an important message. I hope college students all across the country get a chance to see it. I hope that all college students bring you to their campus so that way you can have this talk with the fraternity and sorority community. I can't think of a more important talk, to be quite honest with you. And I think this coming fall, it's even more critical that you get onto college campuses in August, in September, before all of these social events start really happening, because I don't want to see any other articles printed this fall. I really don't.
Yeah, Michael, I'm worried because I think that it's going to be unprecedented in terms of how bad it's going to be in terms of these issues in the fall, because you got a lot of people that have been cooped up and you've got a whole year, essentially 2 years of students that have not been socialized. And we just have to have our guard up because it is going to be a tough year. And, administrators and fraternities and sororities need to know that this is coming down the pipe. And you've heard it here first.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for protecting the fraternity and sorority members. And I hope to see you on a college campus real soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
All right, we'll talk soon. Thanks again.